The first thing I noticed wasn't the music. It was the scent of pure arrogance. At table 3 of the high society gala, the air was thick. Crystal glasses clinked, flashbulbs blinded, and sycophantic conversations flowed like cheap wine. But at my seat, time seemed to freeze. My name is Evelyn Ward. I am 48 years old, and I was sitting exactly where I was supposed to be, at least according to the $1.3 billion capital transfer currently idling on my phone. They're looking at us, Layla, my assistant whispered. Let them, I replied calmly, adjusting my silk napkin. The name card in front of me was crisp and unmistakable, Evelyn Ward. Then he arrived. Lucas Vale, the sole heir to the Vale Empire. He approached with the smirk of a man who believed the world was his footstool, followed by a young woman dripping in diamonds who looked like she'd never heard the word no. Lucas didn't ask. He didn't check the card. He simply tapped his fingers on the polished wood table. This seat is taken. I didn't look up. Correct, I'm sitting in it. He let out a dry chuckle. It's for my girlfriend. You should head to the general guest section, ma'am. Before I could respond, he picked up my name card and casually dropped it to the floor. Then he deliberately ground his polished leather heel into it. No apology, no hesitation. Layla bolted upright. Excuse me? Do you have any idea? He ignored her completely, pulling the chair out for his girlfriend as if I were invisible. Around us, the room didn't stop, but the rhythm slowed. Phones at neighboring tables began to tilt toward us. Cameras started rolling. I leaned down, picked up the soiled card, brushed it off with my fingers, and placed it back in its rightful spot. I looked Lucas dead in the eye, my voice terrifyingly steady. You shouldn't have done that. He laughed out loud. What are you going to do? Call security? This is my family's party. What you just did, I said quietly, loud enough for the filming phones to catch every word, just cost your mother exactly $1.3 billion. A flicker of confusion crossed his face before being replaced by mockery. Let's get my mother down here. Like she'll help you understand your place in this city. Layla looked worried. Evelyn, we should leave. I remained silent. The crowd was breathless, waiting to see who I was. They would find out soon enough, and as always, this dramatic story is a work of fiction created exclusively by the karma and character. Lucas didn't wait. He pulled out his phone and hit the speakerphone. Mom, get down to table 3. There's a stubborn woman squatting in a VIP seat claiming to be one of our investors. The shift in the room happened before Victoria Vale even appeared. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Victoria entered the space like a deity, powerful and untouchable. What is going on? Her voice was ice. Lucas pointed at me. She's ruining our evening. Mother, Victoria's eyes swept over me, quick, prejudiced, and utterly failing. She didn't bother looking at the name card, nor did she recognize the face of the woman she had spent a month sending desperate invitation letters to. I'm afraid this section is reserved for confirmed guests, Victoria said with authority. Security, please escort this lady out through the back exit to avoid a scene, Layla protested. We have an official invitation from your office. Victoria merely raised a hand like that was enough. 2 large security guards closed in. Lucas smirked as he pulled the chair out again. Sit down, babe, the trash has been cleared. The girlfriend sat, graceful as a victor. Around us whispers rippled, probably a social climber sneaking in. I didn't resist when the guards touched my arm. I simply stood up and placed the name card on the table one last time. I looked Victoria in the eye, not with anger, but with a chilling certainty. You won't remember this moment the way you think you will, Victoria, I said softly. You'll remember it as the final minute you ever owned this company. She didn't deign to respond. In her world, I was already a discarded failure. I turned and walked away. Layla followed, her hand still gripping her phone tightly. Behind us, the melodic music resumed. Glasses clinked again as if no tear had ever been made in the social fabric, but it was an illusion. When I stepped through those golden doors, I didn't just take myself. I took the lifeblood of the Vale Group with me. What happens to a company when the one person you needed to protect is the person you just threw onto the street? Daniel Price should have been there to stop the catastrophe. Instead, he was stuck in gridlock traffic, sweat beads forming on his forehead. Daniel wasn't just a guest. He was the chief investment officer for Gideon Price, the largest shareholder of the Vale Group, and he was the only man in the city who knew exactly what Evelyn Ward looked like. His phone buzzed incessantly. Pick up Victoria, Lucas, anyone, he roared in his car. Finally, an assistant answered. Hi, Daniel. The party is going wonderful. Has Evelyn Ward arrived? Daniel cut her off. Oh, there was a middle-aged woman causing trouble at table 3, but Victoria handled it. She's been kicked out. Daniel's face went white. His heart skipped a beat. You kicked out who? At that exact moment, his phone buzzed with a notification from the internal banking app. A $1.3 billion funding commitment cancellation had been triggered. Reason for cancellation? Partner breach of minimum respect protocols. Turn the car around, Daniel screamed at the driver. Not to the party, to Mrs. Ward's private residence. Now back in the ballroom, Lucas was still sipping champagne, entirely unaware that every gulp of wine cost millions of dollars he would never be able to repay. He didn't know that when Evelyn walked out that door, the $1.3 billion on his family's balance sheet evaporated like mist in the sun. Daniel stared blankly at his phone. A final message from Layla arrived. The deal is dead. Do not call again. The real disaster didn't start with a bang. It started with a deadly silence from the woman whose name card they had just thrown away. The next morning at the Vale Group headquarters, the narrative had been edited into a neat little package. A minor misunderstanding, Victoria announced during the morning briefing, her voice sharp and self-assured. Nothing that affects the big picture. No one dared to contradict her. Why question it when on paper the $1.3 billion figure still shimmered like a promise of infinite expansion? Lucas, the catalyst of the chaos, didn't even bother hiding his smugness. I overheard him laughing over the phone later. "It's all settled, babe. That old woman was just a social climber looking for attention. My mother tossed her out like trash. She's gone." He thought her disappearance was the end of the story. But in high finance, a shark's silence is always the sign that a slaughter is about to begin. Downstairs, the CFO's office was devoid of laughter. "We're ready for Phase 1 capital allocation," he said, sweat beading on his brow. "But we still haven't received the disbursement confirmation code from the investor." A junior analyst asked timidly, "Is it just a delay?" The CFO didn't answer. A delay at this level usually comes with an unannounced death sentence. Daniel Price had called me 10 times. The calls, no answer. The emails, no response. The messages seen, but not a single word back. Daniel burst into Gideon's office, where the chairman sat relaxed in his leather chair. "She isn't answering," Daniel said, his voice trembling. Gideon looked up. "Evelyn Ward is meticulous. That's not unusual. This is different," Daniel insisted. "She never goes dark right before a signing. Unless the bridge has been burned." Gideon leaned back, trying to maintain his final shred of composure. But deep down, he felt the chill rising from his spine. While upstairs, the celebratory wine was being poured for a hollow victory. In the basement, the gears of the Vale Empire were beginning to slip off the rails. The question was no longer what happened, but where will the collapse start? Silence is never empty. In business, silence is a declaration of war. By the second day, the delay transformed into a quiet panic. Every attempt at contact from the Vale Group hit a stone wall. The only response came from Layla, but her message was so brief it was cruel. "We have received your inquiries, reviewing internally. No further comment." Daniel stood before Gideon's desk, saying, "What done, she hasn't said no yet." Gideon clung to hope. "She hasn't said yes either," Daniel replied. "And Yule and Evelyn Ward only stays silent when she's busy signing a withdrawal order somewhere else." Gideon picked up the phone himself, bypassing all secretaries and protocols. He called my private number directly. The ringtone dragged on, then fell into absolute stillness. Across the corporate tower, the silence began to leak out in places that could no longer be hidden. The CFO watched the cash flow chart stagnate. "We cannot move forward on new projects without the committed funds. Legally, we are on the verge of insolvency." On the top floor, Victoria's patience finally snapped. "You're all overreacting," she snapped during a board check-in. "We aren't going to lose $1 billion deal over a minor seating mishap at a party, P.C." Lucas added a smirk. "Exactly. Just a bitter old woman." This time, no one agreed with him. Every face around the table was pale. They felt the friction, the stagnation, the tiny cracks spreading across a financial system they thought was invincible. Gideon stared at Daniel. "Tell me the truth. What happened that night?" Daniel took a deep breath. "I think we're about to see it for ourselves." And at that exact moment, a video began to go viral at lightning speed through the private circles of the financial elite. It didn't come from a formal news source. It was an anonymous email with the subject, "The real price of a seat at the Vale table." Gideon opened the video. The scene appeared with upbeat music and the glitz of the gala. Then the camera panned to table 3. Lucas's voice rang out, razor sharp. "You should head to the general guest section." Gideon stopped breathing as he watched his son pick up the name card marked Evelyn Ward and drop it on the floor. The small sound of the paper hitting the ground sounded like an explosion in the silent office. Then Victoria appeared, calm, powerful, and ordering security to escort the most powerful woman on their partner list out like a criminal. Gideon replayed the video, slow, very slow. Evelyn Ward's face appeared for a split second before she left. No anger, no screaming, just a look of pure, piercing clarity. "My God," Gideon whispered, the phone slipping from his hand. Daniel stood behind him, his voice thick. "It's her, no doubt." The video needed no explanation. It needed no context. It was a staggering indictment of a family's peak arrogance. It showed that the Vale Group didn't just lack capital, they lacked basic integrity. Gideon slumped in his chair. This was no longer just a financial crisis. It was an irreparable brand catastrophe. "No one told me," Gideon muttered. Daniel didn't answer. No answer could save them now. The video hadn't just reached the employees, it was on the desks of every major shareholder. Evelyn's silence finally had a meaning, and its name was destruction. The decision wasn't announced through a memo. It was executed with a system-wide wipe. Gideon didn't call a press conference. He gave one single order. Freeze every project in the finance department. The dashboard screens bled red. Approval orders were blocked and mid-transit funds were flagged. At first, Victoria maintained her arrogance. "This is just a high-stakes negotiation. Gideon is overreacting to gain leverage." But she was wrong. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a mass exodus. When the formal notice finally arrived, the language was chillingly clinical. Withdrawal of all committed capital, $1.3 billion evaporated. No delays, no renegotiations. Gone. The CFO slumped into his chair, the phone slipping from his hand. This isn't a freeze. This is the collapse of an empire. Expansion plans were halted and debts came due with no collateral. The gilded mask of the Vale family shattered. Lucas wasn't laughing anymore. He stood in the lobby watching employees scramble to pack their desks, understanding for the first time the true cost of a chair. Now, the question wasn't what happened, but who will be the sacrificial lamb? The board watched the video for the third time. The room was deathly silent. Victoria tried to defend herself. It was a minor incident taken out of context. Enough, Gideon roared, slamming a dossier onto the table. Don't you get it? She wasn't just an investor, she was our only lifeline. Daniel stepped forward, placing a single condition on the table. Mrs. Ward has agreed to return to the table, but not under the current structure. The meeting took place in a small, discreet tea room. I sat there, facing Gideon and Daniel. No lawyers, no assistants, no audience. The capital can return, I said, my voice as calm as if I were discussing the weather. Gideon held his breath, held his. But this company cannot be run by those who disregard the basic dignity of others. I want a total purge of the leadership team. Silence fell. That was the ultimate price, the survival of the company in exchange for the exit of the founding family. Gideon nodded, a nod heavy with the weight of an era ending. The document placed before the board was not a proposal. It was a death warrant for the arrogant. This is unacceptable, Victoria hissed, her perfectly made-up face contorted with rage. You're stripping my executive power over a seat. Not over a seat, Gideon replied, his eyes cold. But because you've proven to be a liability, this corporation can no longer afford. Daniel presented the numbers, debt ratios, insolvency risk, and a reputation plummeting on social media. The seat video had become the symbol of Vale family rot. Customers boycotted, partners fled. Lucas sat with his head down, feeling the crushing weight of reality. He looked around the room for a sympathetic eye but found only cold stares. In business, loyalty vanishes the moment the bottom line hits zero. That night, Victoria understood her choice. Keep her ego and watch the company go bankrupt, or leave and salvage what little assets remained for her son. By morning, one of those two things had to disappear forever. The vote didn't take long. When the results were announced, Victoria stood up, trying to maintain a final shred of pride despite her trembling hands. She was stripped of her executive authority, effective immediately. Lucas tried to protest, tried to invoke old connections to flip the situation, but a board member cut him off. Sit down. You no longer have a voice here. Lucas's name was erased from the succession line. Victoria's name vanished from the CEO plaque. An independent investigation began unearthing years of financial misconduct hidden under the family banner. The old empire fell so a new, transparent structure could rise. My capital returned, but to a completely different company. Layla stood outside the boardroom, watching the doors slam shut behind the veils. She smiled. They still don't understand why they lost, did they? They lost because they thought money gave them the right to stand above respect, I replied. I never went back to sit at that seat at table 3. I didn't need to because from my position on the outside, I now owned the entire table. They stole a seat that wasn't theirs. In the end, they lost everything they thought would be theirs forever. Life is much like a grand gala where everyone is searching for their place at the table. Many spend their lives clawing for a seat at table 3, a place of power, glitz, and applause. But they forget one fundamental truth. Your value is not defined by the chair you sit in, but by how you treat those around you while you are at the top. Never let arrogance blind you into seeing a billionaire as just a nobody or a dignified soul as trash. In the relentless cycle of karma, the seat you snatch from someone today might just be the trap that takes everything from you tomorrow. Tell me, friend, how are you occupying your seat? With kindness or with entitlement? If the journey of Evelyn Ward resonated with you, please subscribe to Her Fear, and share the story as a gentle reminder that respect is the only currency that never devalues. I'll see you in the next chapter of Consequence. This fictional work was created and is owned by the Her Fear channel. Kindness is the only investment that never fails.